the Trump administration reviewed U.S. involvement with the United Nations and pulled out of, defunded, and reduced participation in UN bodies and agreements it judged to be against U.S. interests. It made clear that the UN does not have authority over U.S. law and that America will not be bound by international rules that bypass Congress or undermine national sovereignty. In plain terms, the U.S. cooperates when it chooses, pays only where it sees value, and walks away when the UN overreaches. So naturally, we were thinking, what sort of risks could come up? Why are we not just taking the U.S. out of the United Nations outright? That's been a lot of criticism in our circles is, well, we just need to remove ourselves entirely from it. But after doing an analysis and thinking about it quite deeply, it wouldn't really be a good idea to just completely withdraw from everything outright, because then we couldn't have that seat at the table, right, to be able to voice concerns and stuff. So what we did pull out of, or what we are staying in, we know that we've withdrawn from 66, UN agencies and then related offshoots and such. But where we have remained is regarding structure, like the structural. So International Telecommunication Union, that's the ITU. This is where rules are set for phones and internet infrastructure and satellites and future technologies. So, the thing is like whoever controls these standards quietly controls how the digital world works. So we want to keep that seat at the table. The other thing is International Maritime Organizations. So that's the IMO. So we kept this access to the UN as far as this goes. And this body sets the rules for global shipping. And since almost everything moves by ship, these standards shape trade, supply chains, and who gets access to markets. And then also as well, like the International Labor Organization. So this has a lot to do with we've talked to you guys about even in workforce compliance, readiness, like at community colleges and universities, it's like they're all trying to indoctrinate you for the workforce. So we're saying we don't want anything ideological, like you're not going to control our labor. So this group sets labor, global standards for labor, and often, and then it's, what else could I say? Even though they aren't laws, they exert constant pressure on nations and companies to comply. So I guess the main overall thing to know as well is that the Trump administration has initiated a broad, deliberate pullback from the United Nations bodies and international agreements. It determined where it was acting against U.S. interests and sovereignty and constitutional order. And this is not a retreat from global engagement. So it's not isolationist. It's not that, but a strategy of selective participation, defunding ideological capture of UN agencies while maintaining involved and technical and security relevant forums where standards shape real power. So, for example, one of the people, when we were reading the articles, had come out and said, well, it's illegal for the president to unilaterally pull out of the treaty, that they're required 2/3 of the Senate vote. But actually, that's not true. So the Constitution requires 2/3 Senate vote to enter treaties, but it is intentionally silent on withdraw, an authority presidents have exercised for decades under their Article 2 foreign affairs powers. Courts have consistently declined to block treaty withdrawals, recognizing that international agreements cannot override constitutional sovereignty or bind the nation permanently against the will of its own government. No treaty stands above the Constitution, and no unelected institution or advocacy group can transform international agreements into irrevocable chains on American self-government. So they are clamoring for retaliation and legal action, but actually a lot of this, it's like they are exploiting a legal ambiguity that they hope most Americans will not examine or understand. So again, this has to do with the fact that they've been dumbing down the nation, that people don't understand our constitutional rights, and that, somehow they can blur the line, and it's called lawfare. So they're going to attempt, what they're saying is that they're going to attempt to engage legally, but actually this would be nothing more than lawfare. And it's not, it's not based on, it's based on this rules-based order, this international law, this UN charter that wants to put itself above all nations, including the United States U.S. Constitution. But again, I just want to point out, it is so ridiculous because, they'll sit there and say, well, you can't just invade a nation. That's a sovereign nation. But by the same token, they want to be able to tell everybody what they have to do. So again, it's just those contradictions where everything is coming to light. And people that, when we've looked across the internet, it's like these different commentators and podcasters, a lot of people are saying that, and they're not even like necessarily, they're more surface level analysts. Like they're not thinking along the lines of, they don't have the 80,000 foot view, but they're recognizing like, hang on, this international law thing, like this rules-based order, this is just mumbo jumbo. And who's going to enforce it at the end of the day is if the United States doesn't want to go along with it. So even people like that, are recognizing that. So it's falling apart. So I think there's a lot of room to be encouraged by it. But by the same token, we did want to, I wanted to point out one other thing, Brad.
Go ahead.
The key thing to watch is whether staying engaged in select UN bodies remains defensive or limited, or quietly expands into new forms of compliance and
So how do
funding.
we hold them accountable? What do we look for, right?
Right. So obviously, so standard setting forums can protect national interests, but they can also become backdoor pathways for digital ID and ESG and technocratic control if left unchecked. But, so it's just like, keep an eye on it. But honestly, it really does seem that they have gone through and determined like which of these involvements that we've had with the UN or these NGOs and stuff that are against our own sovereignty. And one of those that I want to point out in particular is that we've written about and talked about is because I know that some of the plans is that water would be the new gold. So they've been privatizing the water all over the world. And I've known about this since I worked in corporate and worked with consumer advertising agencies. And they told us, and this was like back in 2007, I believe it was, where I was learning that water would be the new gold. So I've always kept an eye on this. It's Sustainable Development Goal 6, water. And it's not just about controlling water or the quality of it. It's actually about controlling your brain and your mind. If you're not being a good little boy or a good little girl and you're not playing by the rules, and they're going to ration the water, like literally control life by controlling the water. So this is super dangerous. So I was really excited that the United States has pulled out of that, because that's absolutely what one of the main ways that people don't understand. Like they had such a devious plan for that. So praise God for that.
I'm showing the note on Substack now, which is what you really just summarized for all of us. And I was showing also the article from the Times of Israel, who were offering some of the objections that you just mentioned as well. And in light of what we heard from Ramaphosa earlier, and from the ANC Secretary General, I wanted to, threatening and aligning against the U.S. Well, I've got the video now. I'm going to go ahead and show this for everybody.
Yeah, this is entertaining, you guys.
Maduro had that same idea for a couple days. Let's just watch this. This is fun.
Venga por mí. Aquí lo espero en Miraflores. No se tarde en llegar, cobarde.
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine.
All right, we might have to watch that again before we.
It might get us a copyright strike.
Yeah, well, we'll risk it. I mean, we can't monetize on YouTube anyway. Doesn't matter. Let them take their cut, whatever. But you might say, hey, look, that's not very Christian.
Well, but
I would just have to say though, quickly, that there is nothing unbiblical or unchristian about feeling a sense of loyalty and honor and an appropriate pride for your nation and for those who want to bring you down and weaken you or attack you, those who want to particularly obfuscate and mitigate the law of God. And that's ultimately what our Constitution is founded on. So yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind celebrating the stabilization of our region. I don't mind telling you that I appreciate and stand behind, I don't know, a good 80% of the national security strategy that they released recently. And we've got videos. You can check that out about what that is and why. But that's what I wanted to say. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was just saying that, the fact that Ramaphosa is being so aggressive about what, how he's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, like making all these huge threats. But who else do you see making those threats? You see Governor Tim Walz, and then you see the mayor of Minnesota doing that. And then you see, obviously, other politicians with a similar stance out in California. And so some people think that might be a way. It's like what is it called? It's like a sign. It's like a signal that they're giving that like they feel as if Trump were to make a move, or the Trump administration were to really make a move that they have their people in place to then just like pop off that.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. It's like particularly with the seditious six and Mark Kelly, those representatives, congressmen, senators, and I think maybe a governor, and they're six radical leftists who came out and made the statement telling soldiers, our American military members, to not obey unlawful orders, which is, they already know this, right? They take that oath when they become a member of the U.S. military. And yeah, so that's what some are saying. It's like perhaps what that means is, rather than some kind of inspirational statement, it was more of a declaration that, look, we have our ducks in a row. We're ready to respond to this, or it could be that. I don't know. That was one perspective we heard.
We also saw, because one of the things that sort of like when I looked at the because we scanned the headlines and stuff, and like yesterday, it was yesterday, it came out in Politico, and it had 3 consecutive blurbs on their front page. And it was like, one of them was, Donald Trump can't count on Congress to have his back anymore, listing all the different Republicans that went behind his back, or, didn't support him, voted against, being able to take charge with the Venezuelan situation as far as military. And then right under that, they said Senate unanimously approves installing January 6, 2021 plaque. And I think it was like 17, like everybody voted for that. So what is that? So, it's like what they're trying psychologically, they're also like, to their international crowd, they're trying to say, hey, look, we're in control of the Senate, and we're not condoning anything that this administration does, and he doesn't have any of our control. Right. Or like, he doesn't have our support, rather.
Yeah,
so, so really it is interesting, because if it's indeed true, which it does seem more so every day, and just looking back, even in retrospect, like looking at all the dots, trying to get to the main artery of what is, it would be one thing to just start trying to crack down on drug dealers, in local towns, but the policies in place are what they want to have happen. And those policies are already there. Like, there's so many stories when you watch about the cannabis-induced psychosis, which is a whole nother story, which we will talk about. It is a thing. We've looked into it. And then there's the fentanyl thing. And every time it's like they know who the dealer was, but they never do anything about who did it. I mean, and so again, the policies that are in place are what they want to have happen. So it is very strategic to then go down to Venezuela and try to choke it at the artery, like the matrix, the tentacles that are funding this apparatus. And it happens to be the apparatus that also is connected to Davos and the city of London.
And to that point, very interesting in our research over the past couple of days, thinking about bombing a boat, a speedboat, a drug boat, in the Caribbean, or maybe in the Gulf of Mexico. Why that might be more than just bombing a drug trafficker. Before they ever did that, before they ever started these, destroying, I think it's happened two or maybe three times now where they've blown up a drug boat. By the way, people say, oh, those are just fishing boats. Fishing boats don't do 180 miles an hour. Anyway, why might they do that? What might be another strategic reason? So before they did that, they had all of these assets in place in the Caribbean, naval forces, capable of surveillance, soaking up the data and all the signals in the area. And so when you attack one of those drug boats, certainly they're going to start communicating with one another. And when they do that, the American assets were there to immediately suck up all those signals, find out where they're coming from, who is interested in this boat that we just destroyed, and then start putting the pins in the board and finding out who is actually responsible for this. So that would be another strategic reason for doing that we heard from another
right.
researcher. That made a lot of sense. It'd be a strategic reason for doing that. You could find out, you could start tracing this back to its root, which we're saying, of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, right here, Trump versus the crown and the liberal international order. We've said that's what Summer's been writing about, and we've been saying here to you. This what we see happening right now is a clarifying moment that is really exposing the ideological lines that have been drawn since the American Revolution.
And then apparently there's been like a flurry of assassinations within the cartels, which also gives other signals to connections. And then you see how the Senate just voted. You see which Republicans just voted against it. So it's like all the cockroaches are coming out. And I'm sure that was part of this too. Like who's going to come out that we thought is on our side, that's going to stance, come up and we see, okay, actually they're not on our side. So lines are being drawn, and it's very interesting.
Another article that's available on Substack now, this one that Summer wrote, The International Law is Illegitimate and Fraudulent, explaining much of what she's just laid out for you here that we've talked about, sustained by narco capital, by drug money, violence and theft. Mike Waltz, who is a character when he was first chosen by Trump to be on his cabinet. He is actually now, he's the ambassador to the United Nations. And he scorched him the other day. And look, we were critical of him at first. Just to remind you here, we're not just blindly following a political party. We're looking at these things individually and determining, does this fit with God's law? What we're hearing here. I don't mean, is that guy a Christian? I don't mean, are they fighting for Christianity? I don't mean that. I mean, God uses people in all quarters, in all areas of life. In the government, I mean, again, for the umpteenth time, government is established by God for the purpose of restraining evil, punishing the wicked, and protecting what is good. So when we when we hear these criticisms about, well, you're just pushing a political narrative, that is nonsense. It isn't true. In fact, I did a video recently where I went through and showed exactly. I responded to Days of Noah's comment that Jesus wouldn't want you to be involved in politics. In fact, he would want you to withdraw from it all and just focus on your own community, right? His idea that was localism was supreme. And I don't disagree with the fact that localism is our first concern. But what do you mean by localism? How do you love your neighbor if you don't involve yourself in the laws and the making of laws that affect them? So you can think about, just quickly here for a minute, it's on my mind, the parable of the talents, right? How are we good stewards of what the Lord has given us? There are 3 duties that every Christian has, and that is, first of all, we have the cultural mandate. Be fruitful and multiply, take dominion over the earth. Secondly, the Great Commission, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, which is another comment we heard on Dave's show recently. God isn't concerned with nations, he said. Well, you can't read Psalm 2 and come to that conclusion. So if you have that position, you're taking an unbiblical perspective about nationhood and government. And then the third duty, of course, is we've got the cultural mandate, the Great Commission, and actually our first and greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. How do you do that? You be a good steward of the liberty that God has allowed us to have, still allows us to have for now. And you see this in the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, one of Jesus' key teachings on responsibility and the use of God-given resources, including gifts of influence and authority, the gift of liberty. And you can think of this too primarily in terms of the parable of the talents features the idea of property. And Jesus described a master who entrusts his servants with differing amounts of talents, a form of currency. And he goes away. He leaves them with this money, essentially, and then goes away. And he expects them to wisely invest and multiply what they've been given. Your opportunity in a nation with a constitution that honors the moral law of God. Wisely invest and multiply what you've been given, and those who responsibly steward their talents are rewarded. But in that parable, when the master returns, and the master in this parable represents Christ, and then the field there, the actions of those stewards with that money would represent our duties in the world. I'll just read it for you. Jesus described a master who entrusts his servants with differing amounts of money, expecting them to wisely invest and multiply what they've been given. Those who responsibly steward their talents are rewarded. When the master returns and sees that the first two servants had invested and multiplied what he had given them, he rewards them. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the comfort or the rest or the glory of your master. But the one who buried his talent out of fear, didn't do anything with it, the one who withdrew from the world altogether. Remember, we're in the world. This is not our home, but we are here. And we're given at least 3 important duties, which I just laid out for you. The one who buried his talent, did nothing, is rebuked. Not just rebuked, cast into outer darkness, which suggests that if we look at this in terms of the new covenant and where this parable was given, it seems to say that servant was never one of us to begin with. Some might say this parable is about sharing the gospel, not building up earthly kingdoms. That is true. But the parable also contains a very important lesson about stewardship and how God expects us to use all the good gifts he's given us wisely in service of the gospel to, quote, bring an increase to his estate in anticipation of his promised return. So the application here is that we must be vigilant. Use every opportunity and be diligent to use our gifts effectively to be faithful stewards. It is required of stewards that they be found faithful, is what Paul said to the Corinthians. Use our gifts effectively in ways that make the most impact in sharing the gospel with unbelievers. And also, remember what Charlie Kirk said, our first principle is to do just that. Share the gospel. Teach people about Christ. And our second important duty is to ensure that we can do number one. That means to preserve the liberty that we have that allows us to freely do that. This includes using our influence and abilities to benefit the broader community. In many cases, protecting the spread of the gospel obviously extends into civic and governmental roles. When you apply this parable, this concept, to the realm of civic duty, Jesus' message of faithful stewardship means to actively engage in society rather than hiding away from it. So there's that. Now let's look for a moment here. We've got a couple more articles on Substack just to bring your attention to. Mamdani's tenant czar. This was this his campaign manager, Summer, or is this someone else?
Well, this is the one that's going to be in charge of the private property issue.
Oh, yes.
The campaign manager is mentioned in that article, though, yes.
In the name of anti-racism, right? Declares war on private property in the name of anti-racism, which is just racism by another name, because anti-racism is essentially distributive justice. Some people get justice and some people don't, particularly those with privilege don't get justice. The familiar revolutionary pattern of moral reframing, centralized power, and expropriation. So this is an excellent article that you need to check out about Mamdani's desire to establish his own little communist utopia right there in New York City.
Beyond that too, though, because it goes into who put him in power and what is this? I mean, so I've never seen anybody talk about this, period.
Well, Summer says here, it goes to the core of what is unfolding in New York City and exposes connections that are being deliberately ignored. As she just said, I have not seen this analysis laid out clearly anywhere else. Don't skip this. Plus, there's a breakout from yours truly below. So at a glance, in New York City right now, racial ideology, tenant power, and equity language are being used to dismantle private property rights and normalize collectivist housing policy in New York City. Remember, Mamdani also has the idea of creating government or city-run grocery stores. Folks, that is exactly what was done in the communist utopia of the Soviet Union and in China.
Right, like control the water and control the food. No, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, right, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. All right. So as Summer says, this article will tell you who is really behind this, and it goes beyond Mamdani. Am I right to assume that?
That's right.
All right.
So, well, you might want to just go ahead and show that We Alliance picture, though. Scroll down to show them. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we subscribe to this, and you guys need to be aware of who the Wellbeing Economy Alliance is. Yeah. And so in this article, you may have read about it before in articles that we put out, but, in the newsletter, it was, yay, this is an amazing transformation for New York City, and they're super excited and they're celebrating him. Why? Because they're the ones that installed him. Okay. This is Club of Rome. This is Davos. This is the Fabian Socialists. Okay. So they're the ones. And then this article details out with all of the information that you need to sort of hash out how this is working and how it's a test pilot. And, obviously if they can take down, it's symbolic. They feel like they've conquered America by taking its big city, famous city, New York. They've obviously they've got Gavin Newsom out in California. So this will really give you a deep picture of what's actually happening there. Because again, we've talked about this before. If they get their way, and they're going to be gunning for it. Like, it's really important who wins the election this year. We cannot let them take power, because it really is make or break, because they want to balkanize the United States and then get everybody into these little like Cardano style digital communes that they're promised. Oh, you can keep your sovereignty and your autonomy through these digital communes, but really that's the entrance into the digital ID system that will enslave people. So don't take the bait. What they really want to do is balkanize and literally divide us, see states breaking off because they can't stand what's happening in New York or what's happening in Portland, and then weakening us through that. So that has been their strategy. So, yeah.
Yeah. So this is Eliana Bisgard Church, who someone was discussing here, who is the one, right? This is the one who's over this program, the tenant czar, the one who's going to try to implement this.
Oh, no. No, she's not. She's part of the London Economics, the school. She's trained up in, London School of Economics. She's the one that helped him get elected.
She's the campaign manager, right? I remember her now. She was, look at this, an active member of the Democratic Socialists of America, not surprising, the most prominent Marxist organization operating within the U.S. political system. Democratic Socialists of America functions as a domestic extension of the international socialist movement, advancing collectivist and redistributive frameworks consistent with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. So now you can see why it is that Trump might be wanting to withdraw the United States from these groups. Now that brings us also, Summer, to Chavez. Right here, Maria Corina Machado, who has made known that she's an anti-Marxist. She's Venezuelan. She's the one who, as far as we know, actually won the last election of Venezuela, which Maduro squashed and ignored and kept his power. And so everyone believes, a lot of Venezuelans believe, this is the one for us. So it's curious. She's an anti-Marxist, right? So it's interesting that Trump has not put his support behind her yet. Let's listen to her talk for just a minute. Why is it that Trump hasn't openly stated that, well, she won the election, this is the one that we would like to see in power there? Why might he not want to do that? Let's listen to her for just a moment before we answer that question.
And Donald Trump in particular surprised, even shocked some people by saying he does not support you as the next leader of Venezuela or your party. He said, for you, you're nice, but you lack respect in the country and that it would be tough for you to lead. Have you spoken to him since Maduro's capture? And what would you say to him? What do you want him to know?
No, I have not spoken to him this year, and I have insisted in a clear message on behalf of the Venezuelan people. We are very, very grateful. A few weeks ago, people would have said it was impossible to reach this point. And President Trump's leadership and courage has brought Nicolás Maduro to face justice. And this is huge. This is a major step towards restoring prosperity and rule of law and democracy in Venezuela. So this is huge. We are not there yet. We realize we have huge challenges, and we are willing to work together, not only with the United States, but with many other countries and leaders around the world that understand how critical the stability in Venezuela and democracy in Venezuela is for the Western Hemisphere.
So she talks about democracy in Venezuela, and a lot of people support her. And she, in this interview, in fact, she's the one who won the Nobel Peace Prize and then dedicated it to Donald Trump. And in this interview, she speaks glowingly of Trump. The reporter tries many times to set her up, but he's not really supporting you. Doesn't that bother you? Don't you want to give him some advice or what? She is very careful to not say anything negative about Trump. All she does is say that we're grateful. He's done a great thing. And so the question is then, Summer, why in the world would it be that Trump doesn't just support her right out of the gate? I have a
Well,
couple reasons, but what do you think right off the top? I mean, I have a couple facts, but what do you think?
well, because I wanted to do an investigation on her. So I put this out on January 7th. Who is she? Winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And I started out by saying we live in extraordinarily deceptive times when discernment requires reading not only the lines presented to us, but the power structures and moral frameworks operating behind them. We must learn to recognize the language, signals, and markers of the enemy. So when, first of all this touting of the democracy, longtime listeners of us know that when they say democracy, they mean something else. Unfortunately, the word democracy has been captured by the collectivist, progressivist institutions and force that we're now reckoning with, that we're literally in a battle with right now. And so, she was really touting the democracy. And then we know as well, I had in the back of my head, and she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And so we have learned, Brad and I have learned along the way in our studies that's they only give that to people that are their own. This is the socialist, communist, Marxian bloc of individuals. So why are they giving her that peace prize? So it prompted me to then look into her. Plus, I knew that the Trump administration had rejected her, as they're presenting her as like anti-Marxist. And so it's like they know that if they can just tell the population like a few different things, that they'll think that she's on their side, when really she's not, because clearly, getting this Nobel Peace Prize, they don't give that again to anybody other than their own clan.
And over the past 24 hours, I have come into the possession of the information that even supports further what you're saying. It appears that Machado is, in fact, a former WEFer.
Yep.
And
there you go.
And is pro-gay marriage. So this gives you, look, that is a very particular ideology. She's not just neutral; she is for it and advocates for it. So, that's a really excellent piece there that gives us some perspective on how to think about this issue. She says she's an anti-Marxist. Well, and it's very popular these days to say you're anti-communist. Well, it throughout the liberal international order since the fall of the Soviet Union, United States government has worked with many governments and leaders and entities in South America, particularly in Eastern Europe, who billed themselves and said that they were anti-communist. Meanwhile, they were as corrupt as the day is long. So here's the point I want to make. Being anti-communist is good, but being anti-communist isn't enough alone. It's a necessary posture, right? Because of all the collectivist ideology that saturates political narrative and even our culture. We've all been our culture's embedded with collectivist ideas now. Collectivist ideologies continue to deform law, economics, and anthropology. Who is man? Where did we come from? Were we created? Did we evolve? What is your perspective on that? That's very important. So just being anti-communist or anti-Marxist is insufficient. Just being opposed, that tells people what you reject, but it doesn't say what you actually do affirm. And it also doesn't clearly indicate what standard you're making your assumptions or presuppositions by, what standard that your affirmation is measured by. History demonstrates that societies do not collapse simply because they adopt false ideas, but because they abandon true ones. A vacuum of conviction will always be filled, if not by Marxism, then by a managerial technocracy, soft totalitarianism, or a spiritually hollow neutrality that smuggles in its own dogmas. So when you say I'm anti-communist, I'm anti-Marxist, that you're defining yourself by resistance alone. But resistance without a fixed point, remember, that's That's our constitutional order. It's based on a fixed point of reference.
Well,
if you're not clearly stating that that's where you're coming from, then you're on an unstable position.
and it's interesting what's popped up here, which makes the point even more about how tricky they can be with their manipulations, because it says she is a prominent Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner. While she attended forums and events with global organizations, the World Economic Forum, the WEF itself, does not have specific official stance on gay marriage as core organizational policy, but rather serves as a platform for discussion on global issues. So trying to sort of backstep from that, but that's not the kicker here. She says she distinguishes her personal faith from her politics, stating she rules out the idea of her faith influencing her political decisions. See, so that's that right there is huge, you know, and then it's huge.
You go ahead and say it. You can't, you cannot.
You can't separate your faith from politics.
That is to assume. It's just like what I was saying in response to Days of Noah's comments. You cannot separate your worldview from your view of order in the world.
And she says she positions herself as a centrist and a liberal.
Where have we heard that before?
Yeah, a centrist and a liberal, breaking from the traditional left-right arguments, despite being often labeled as a right-wing or far-right figure by critics. So see what I mean? Like, they're definitely nudging the population. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what that is?
Sorry?
You know what that is, Summer? That is this idea of a positive moral narrative. That's what progressivism is founded on, a positive moral narrative.
Right.
But that's what communism itself thrives on. The idea that we have the moral high ground because we have a positive moral narrative.
Right.
But it's a counterfeit gospel of, again, liberation, equality, and whatever historical.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they're trying to tout her again. She got the Peace Prize. That, you know, like they're like, oh, you know, she won. The people voted for her. She won. Why is Trump not giving it to her? Why? Because they want to install her. She is the puppet that they had ready in line. And the fact that they want to say that, you know, she's breaking from the traditional left-right arguments. Well, in our own American politics, you hear all of this, like there is, you know, the breaking down of the sides and all of that, and how, you know, in the RNC, we saw that the Republicans look like the Democrats now, you know, this kind of thing. So they're definitely, it's that whole, the Hegelian dialectic, right? The synthesis, it's like they push you so far and they're trying to create a new synthesis. And again, just the fact that she's out there going, that she distinguishes her personal faith from her politics, stating that she rules out the idea of her faith influencing her political decisions. That is sustainable development approved. That I can tell you 1000% is how they want you to think about things, because they want to insert their theosophical Eastern mysticism through their conditioning, through social emotional learning and ESG scores and DEI.
That's what I was going to say, is that really does align with the inner development goals.
It does.
Of the United Nations.
And you can't separate you cannot untether yourself from God's morality.
Or tyranny is inevitable. Always. Yeah. So that's a good find right there.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And so I wanted to state that being anti-communist isn't enough. Because if you're just an opponent of communism, you know, but you're not clear on where you stand morally, even spiritually, then you are automatically conceding the moral high ground to those who come in and say they have the proper eschatological view of the world. Because go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, we know for sure that when things get hot, they have license to be deceptive. Like if there's too much pushback, and, you know, like in South America, like, you know, there's religious people down there. And so they, you know, like they need to go undercover and they need to be deceptive in order to win the trust of the people. So this is a perfect example of them masking who they really are. Like they don't have to come out and tell you, yeah, I'm part of the communist movement, but they can behave. There are tells that you can determine that they are a part of that. So
it's crucial to make this point, and she gives us a good context for doing it, right? No society, no social order is morally neutral. But to say what she was saying there was to assume that you could somehow be morally neutral. There is no gray area. So the question you want to always ask in order to hold people accountable to their worldview, I'm anti-communist. Okay, but by what standard are you anti-communist? Because the decisive question is not whether you have a worldview or a view of morality. The question is, which one do you have? Ordered liberty, as understood in the American tradition, presupposes a moral law that's prior to the state, that's transcendent, beyond, above, that the state emanates from. A law not invented, but recognized by people. This is why the American constitutional order is intelligible only within a biblical worldview that affirms man as created, fallen, accountable, and endowed with dignity by God. So if you make the statement that she said there, I separate my spirituality from my political views. Well, you've just demonstrated that you are utterly inconsistent.
right. And that's exactly the identical. Remember, like everybody, even in the so-called liberty and truth movement, they have repeatedly criticized Christians who want to speak on moral issues. Don't talk to me about your religion. Don't bring your religion into the public square. Keep it at home. Keep it private. So this is a sustainable development goal standard.
Communism is rightly rejected because it denies God. And to say that your politics and your spirituality are separated also denies God, denies the one who created these, who decreed and providentially allowed these systems. And when that happens, when you say I'm anti-communist, but you don't affirm the moral law of God, like many of the people on our side of the argument do, I would think Courtney Taylor would be one of those who all of her work is doing just that. I'm anti-communist, but keep that 10 Commandments out of the schools, that kind of thing. You reject communism because it denies God and it dissolves the individual into the collective. So if you take that position, you are only repeating the same mistakes that have happened already here to bring us to this point in America. Just to be merely anti-communist is to fight symptoms while ignoring foundations. The real question is not what we oppose, but whom do we obey? If liberty is to endure, it must be openly grounded in the moral law of God and courageously defended within constitutional limits. Anything less than that will drift, slowly but surely, toward the very tyranny it claims to resist. So that's all I have, Summer, unless you've got something you want to add here on the way out. Anything you want to make sure that we promote on the Substack or something like that? We're a little over an hour and a half, so I wanted to.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Okay, well, here is a look at those articles. I'll show you anyway. Ice Floyd, Political Necromancy, Leadership, and Blood Guilt in Minneapolis. Trump versus the Crown. This is what you have to understand. Ultimately, it appears that they're not saying it openly, but ultimately it appears that this administration is very much aware of who is behind the liberal international order or the rules-based order that fuels the United Nations perspective. Also, the podcast from our last show, The Ultimate Truths About the Minneapolis Ice Shooting, Leadership, Truth, and Blood Guilt. Mamdani's Tenant Czar, who we just spoke about a moment ago, and the fight, the war on private property that's going down in New York City right now. The Nobel test, why defenders of democracy deserve closer scrutiny. Maria Corina Machado, who we've just tried to give you some perspective on. International law is illegitimate and fraudulent. Venezuela is the test case for the moral law or restraining evil. Not regime change in Venezuela. Trump strike is truly on the city of London. So there's two really good articles right at the top of our list. And actually, this one is featured at the top, pinned to the top right now, about the city of London, the crown, the empire of the city, who really are the moral and political and social force behind what we call globalism or the New World Order. Summer also has an article here on Tom MacDonald and the war on reality, a raw cultural diagnosis of coercion and conscience, particularly about his song. Summer, what's it called? About
Woke World.
Woke World.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll bring that up for you in a show as well soon. Also, the arrest of Nicolas Maduro is lawful, necessary, and morally justified. We break out why that is the case. Venezuela globalism and the war on ordered liberty, which we've talked about a lot here tonight, and modern Babel, civil rights, human rights, and the war against the lawgiver. Civil rights and human rights, when you hear these terms, are fundamentally corruptions of unalienable rights. So human rights and civil rights are ultimately grounded in the idea that the state is deciding is what your rights are, not God. So a couple of those back-to-back articles there about that. That's plenty for you guys to check into. Now, if you got through those articles, you would be very well prepared for what's happening right now and how to view it all. Our latest article here, Ice Floyd, Political Necromancy, Leadership, and Blood Guilt. What was the one you put up today that didn't go out to the...
That was the United Nations one.
Okay.
What Trump did with United Nations.
Will it show up on my...
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Maybe you just have to refresh.
There it is. Is this it? Trump? No. No, that's the video. Yeah, I'm just not seeing it in my list here. So I'm
if you go into archive,
I know it's hard for me to get there.
Just go the top where they've got all the names, podcast notes, SEL, PSYOP. Go over to the right.
Okay.
To the right.
And do what? Archive. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it.
So there's one that Summer has put out. We're still kind of working on it. So it wasn't released on the mailing list. By the way, if you join our Substack, you'll get an email every time that we publish an article. Also, download the Armor of Truth mobile app. You can get these articles right there in the app. You can also get our exclusive content. An easy way to support us there as well. And that's going to be one of the most important things we can do moving forward, is to encourage you to download our app and follow us there. So anything on the way out?
Some people might be saying, you might be hearing a lot, well, isn't this just imperialism?
Mm-hmm.
And no, and confusing the two is the point of the propaganda, I would say to that. Imperialism expands control over people's territory and governance. And what occurred in Venezuela did the opposite. No occupation, no imposed government, no nation building, no permanent military presence. State structures remain intact, and elections were not engineered and resources were not seized. So the operation targeted criminal finance networks and, of course, the people that are enabling those criminal finance networks, right? Not the population of the nation. So true imperialism today, I just wanted to point this out, is exercised through unelected transnational institutions, international law, rules-based order, offshore banking systems, NGOs that dissolve sovereignty while shielding oligarchs, traffickers, and non-state actors from accountability. And that system thrives by branding any disruption of its financial infrastructure as imperial aggression. So for those that are out there saying that the moves that the United States or the Trump administration are doing are imperial, they are the imperialists. They're the ones, it's projection, right? Because true imperialism today is exercised through unelected transnational institutions.
And it's also not regionalism. Now, folks on our side of the fence are aware of regionalism and what it is. It's not regionalism or the technate, not in what has been declared in writing and through some of the actions we've seen lately, because this is not trying to establish a regional order that's part of the global order. This is trying, this national security strategy that they've released and they seem to be so far following up on, is about American exceptionalism. It is about America first, and there is nothing immoral or unbiblical about that.
Right, like
Doesn't mean we can't be engaged with other nations. It means we can be engaged with other nations more effectively.
Right. So like disrupting cartel finance and narco banking and terror-linked capital flows is not empire building. It is the restoration of lawful restraint against organized evil. The accusation of imperialism functions as a moral inversion. It defends the very structure that profit from exploitation while condemning efforts to dismantle them. In short, empire protects the system. So the U.S. Venezuela operation has challenged this. So don't let anybody allow you. I mean, this is so far the way that it's happened. It is justified from a biblical standpoint. And it's about protecting the people from all of these people coming in and poisoning our nation, and then all of the drug flow money that enables this globalist system to try to take over the world and tell us that we're not allowed to bring our religion into the public square. I'm sorry, but the U.S. Constitution guarantees that. It is one of our inalienable rights. They don't have the right to dictate our conscience. Freedom of conscience is guaranteed in the United States Constitution.
And Christ is Lord of the conscience.
That's right.
That's an excellent place to leave it right there. That's well said. And once again, here you can see on the screen at the bottom of our Substack articles, there's a QR code there that you can use to donate directly to us on Stripe. And I would just encourage you, please take a moment to like this video and share it. Leave a comment under the video. Interact with us. That will help the video go out to more people. And that is one way you can really do a lot to help us, just by liking the video, leaving us a comment. Tell us that you appreciate it. Don't like it. Tell us whatever you want to tell us, but tell us. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our Armor of Truth YouTube channel, and please go and join our Substack. You can go to armoroftruth.net, and you'll be right there on our Substack, and you can join there. You can also support us there. Download the Armor of Truth mobile app. You can read our daily articles and blog posts and be a part of our discussions. And you will be prepared to understand what these events mean, and you'll be prepared to meet the challenges of our day. Join the conversation by finding us on not X, not right now anyway, but you can find us also on Instagram. We also have a Telegram feed. And sign up for, I already said that, the Substack. But download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. It's 100% free. You get live notifications and a direct link whenever and wherever we happen to go live, as it might not always be on YouTube. You get exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources.
And we do have a beanie.
We do. It was back here behind me during the show. We have a beanie, and we're gonna, if you'd like to support us at the $50 level or more, we'll be happy to send you one of our beanies. We don't sell products here, but if you want to.
It's black with the bird on it, so it's pretty cool.
That's right. If you want to support us at the $20 level more, we'll send you a free Bible and a starter pack of tracts. We'll do that for a little while. If you can support AOT financially, every donation of any amount makes a difference. Use the Armor of Truth mobile app Give tab. You can go to armoroftruth.net on our Substack. You can donate there, or you can use the links in the description below this video. So what are you waiting for? Download the AOT mobile app now. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you again here real soon.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. by constantly probing and straining at this one spot. They calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. The average American, they say, soft and decadent. He'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide and do nothing to interfere as they strike at the community's power centers. Any all-out revolution must create a state of crisis wherein almost all of the male population would be forced to remain in their homes because of its affluence. It has waxed soft. The motive force behind its life drive is its endless pursuit of prestige, conspicuous consumption, and sensual pleasure. After the stage is properly set, America could be brought to her knees in 90 days. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization behind these preparations has almost unlimited financial resources. Our enemies are deadly serious about their task, and it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans and their progress. The strategy calls for the quiet conversion of our government. They have one and only one solution for all problems. More government, and then more and more until it's total government. In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist. Label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
Because I don't hate anybody. And I want to see every single solitary person on this earth. I want to see their souls saved. Every single solitary person. And each and every one of us that calls ourselves a Christian should pray vehemently for their souls, that we would see them in heaven and forget about all this when we get up there.